Well, I wonder if you've ever felt the same way I have at times. The way in which Elijah felt. He had a moment of triumph. He had a glorious time. And then it just went downhill from there. And he went into the valley of despondency afterwards. And he hid in a cave. Sort of ran away from the problem and the situation. I feel like that sometimes, don't you? I think it's a psychological thing that we all have a response under stress, particularly when not so good things happen. We might respond by attacking it, You'd fight. Or then, again, we might flee from it or flight. And that's exactly what Elijah did. He was having a rough time of it, and he fled away. I mean, he couldn't deal with what was going on. I know sometimes it feels kind of tough for me to deal with everything going on at one time. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the only one sane left. You ever feel that way? I mean, you go home and watch the evening news and you kind of think to yourself, my gosh, what is going on here? Everybody else seems kind of nuts. Well, Elijah felt everybody else was being so nuts that he even said to himself, God, it's just you and me. I'm hiding in this cave. You see, Elijah had dared to confront the king, Ahab. He had humiliated Ahab. He had killed the prophets that were loyal to the king and his wife, Jezebel. And now the queen, Jezebel, in her fury, sent a message to Elijah vowing revenge. And Elijah fled. It was a tough situation to face, and he goes and hides in a cave. And the interesting thing about the cave he hides in, he climbs the mountain called Mount Horeb, which in some scriptures references is the same mountain that Moses was on when he received the Ten Commandments. So he climbs up this mountain where God seems to be, or God is, or at least God was in Moses' day, finds a cave and hides. Elijah was longing for God. God had been with them. God had watched over him. And now it seems as though the thread of hope was so thin. The people of Israel have deserted you, he cries out, and I alone am left. Well, having fled into the wilderness and hiding in a cave to escape from it all, God came to him and asked him a question. God asks, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Hear the word of our Lord.
Thanks be to God.
1 Kings 19, 9 through 15. At that place he came to a cave and spent the night there. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he answered, "I've been very zealous for you, Lord, the God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. Now I alone am left, and they're seeking my life to take it away." He said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord's about to pass by." Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then there came a voice to him that said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I've been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars and killed your prophets with the sword, and I alone am left, and they're seeking my life to take it away. Then the Lord said to him, Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael king over Aram. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Now, I mean to say to you, when God speaks, and when God asks you a question, God hits the nail right on the head. There's no denying it. It's a fair question. God gave Elijah victory over 450 prophets of Baal. It was God who ignited the fire under these animal sacrifices and settled once and for all who was more powerful, these Baals of Canaanite religion, the religion of Jezebel, or Yahweh, the God of Israel. Elijah was a good man, and Elijah was God's man. Elijah was a champion, God's champion, an ambassador, and God's ambassador. And here he was, hiding in a cave, and God comes and says, What are you doing here, Elijah? Well, he could have asked, Why are you not out in front of the people in the palace confronting Jezebel? Why are you not in the marketplace telling the people about the great victories that I gave you? Or why are you not in the sanctuary offering praise? Nope. Now, it's been my experience as a student of the Bible to see that when God asks questions before, He has known the answer all along, and the person He asks is kind of put on the spot and often gives feeble responses. And God decisively acts in response to such a way, showing up their shortcoming. Here's an example. You'll know what I mean. I recall from the very first question God asks Adam and Eve. God says, Where are you? And after Adam answered, God said, Who told you you were naked? Did you eat of that tree I told you not to? And then remember God's response? Bang, zoom! I like that TV program, The Big Bang Theory. And I like Sheldon's response. Bazinga! Remember God asked Cain about his brother? Where is he? Cain said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? And God's response, remember, bang, zoom, bazinga! So God asks the model prophet of Israel, the one whom many believe Jesus is the reincarnation of, What are you doing here, Elijah? I've given you victory already. You know what I do. Well, when God asks a question, and God knows the answer, no matter what I'm going to say, I think I duck, because here comes the bang, zoom, bazinga. Remember? God says, Go outside. Let me show you something. Well, the response kind of reminds me of, there was a series of movies years ago, show my age, I guess. They don't show them on TV anymore. With Abbott and Costello, remember those movies? Abbott would sort of be kind of hem-hawing around and, well, I don't want to do that. And they go back and forth. And finally, eventually, he gets convinced. And the same thing is going on here. There's kind of a conversation back and forth with God and in Elijah's mind. And Elijah sort of, he ends up inside the mountain. Because there was a fierce wind outside. He probably couldn't stand outside. And the wind was breaking rocks. It was so tough and so hard, and it was so bad. And was God found in the wind? No. And then inside a mountain, can you imagine, inside a cave, it begins to rumble and shake like an earthquake. And is God found in the earthquake? No. And then there's a fire that comes, a huge fire. It kind of is reminiscent of, for me, when the Israelites had left Egypt and they were in the Exodus and they were trying to escape away. Remember, there was a pillar of cloud by day. That was God's presence that led them along. And by night, there was a pillar of fire. And this fire was back on top of Mount Horeb. And there they were. And the fire was blazing hot. Is God found in the fire? No. And then there was a sheer silence. A silence. And Elijah walks out. He puts his cloak over his head. My gosh. You see, the native Canaanites had their Baals, these little gods. And they worshiped the god of the wind. And they worshiped the god of the earthquake. And they worshiped the god of the fire. And what is it that the Bible tells us? That God is not found in any one of those things. It's amazing. I want to stand here and apologize to you for last Sunday. See, in my ignorance, I listened to the radio coming in. I did. I was listening to Way FM. It's a Christian radio station here, They didn't say a single word in the 45 minutes it takes for me to get to my house to the church parking lot about what happened in Orlando Saturday night. I was in ignorance. I didn't know. I didn't know till after church. I would have said something. I would have prayed. I would have said something at least to you about the tragedy, about the hurt, about the loss. Well, today I'm telling you that God was not in the murderous terrorism that destroyed and killed 49 people and injured 53 people. God wasn't in that. But this last week, I sort of saw the calm after the storm, as it were, and I saw people that were comforting other people, no matter who they were. I heard about folks in Orlando who gave up their condominiums in order for other people to come and stay in the condominiums, just to bring comfort and to offer peace. In the stillness of the aftermath, God was present. I think of, industry, businesses like JetBlue. You know what they did? They gave free airline passage to family members of those who lost their lives. That's where God is. That's where God resides. That's where God is healing and loving, bringing out hope. See, God isn't in the horrible wind or the earthquake or the fire or the massacres. But God is in the stillness that comes from those things. The almighty presence of God is in the healing consequences of the tragic. So God asked Elijah, "What are you doing here?" Where can we find God? Where can we find God? We can find God everywhere, like you just sang. You can find the presence of God in all that happens if you simply step back and quietly listen to the still small voice of God, God is there. You think for one moment that the world around us isn't going to pot? You know, the world around us isn't gone crazy? I mean, it's enough to make you want to run away and hide in a cave, doesn't it? But no. You and I, we need to be a witness to the world around us. If you think the world is going mad, I think we need to get on our knees and pray to God and ask God's loving care, God's forgiveness, God's hope to be with all of us. I think of some teenagers in school perhaps that think, heck, all the kids are having sex in school, or not in school maybe, but all the kids in school are having sex. How's that? I'm the only 16-year-old left who's a virgin, just like Elijah, who says he's the only prophet left. Yeah. Seems like everybody's getting a divorce. I think the percentage is over 50%, just barely, but just over 50% right now, people getting a divorce. It looks like everybody's getting a divorce, right? Are you going to be the last married couple around? There's a humorist, Robert Orban, who says, you have to question any period in history where people say that God is dead and Elvis is alive. That's for sure, don't you? Actor Alan Alda has put it this way: any successful movie must feature people doing three things: destroying property, defying authority, and taking off their clothes. See what I mean? Yeah. We can pick up that marvelous book of Revelation, the book that sort of wraps up the whole Bible there. It sort of summarizes human history and how God's intervention has worked in human history. And